Hello again, and this is Robert. I am the recovery guy, and welcome if you are a first-time viewer, and welcome back if you've seen one or more of my segments before. Today, I want to discuss with you the steps, and there's no better place when discussing the steps is to begin at step one. If you have worked through the steps, if you're working through them, if you're just looking at them for the first time, I want to make sure that I speak clearly enough and even slowly enough for newcomers to understand. But I also want to, for the lack of a better term, leave enough meat on the bone if you're someone who's been around a while and you're just looking at the steps in a deeper sense. So the best resource that I've ever used for the steps is the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. So when we look at step one, the step reads, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our life had become unmanageable. It says here, who cares to admit complete defeat? Admission of powerlessness is in the first step in liberation. Interesting word, liberation. Relation of humility to sobriety, mental obsession plus a physical allergy, and then why must every AA hit bottom? Interesting thoughts when you consider what's involved in step one. Again, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our life had become unmanageable. As we look forward, more forward into the chapter, it says again here, who cares to admit complete defeat? Practically no one, of course. Every natural instinct cries out against the idea of personal powerlessness. It is truly awful to admit that, glass in hand, we have warped our minds into such an obsession for destructive drinking that only an act of providence can remove it far from us. No other kind of bankruptcy is like this one. That is so true. Because in reality, who does like to admit defeat? I was so defeated for so long before I ever got to the program of recovery. It was foolishness that I didn't want to admit defeat, but I didn't want to. My pride, my selfishness, my self-centeredness kept me from admitting the degree of defeat that I needed to admit before I could begin, or as I began step one. Admitted I was powerless over alcohol, that my life had become unmanageable. Where are you at? Are you at a point in your drinking career, and believe me, it was my career, there was nothing more important to me, although I wanted things to be more important to me, in reality, there was nothing more important to me than that drink. And as the step indicates, I had a mental obsession coupled with a physical allergy. Let's look at that for a second. My mental obsession told me I had to have a drink. There was no choice for me. I had lost the choice many years before I had ever come to the program of recovery. It was an obsession. It was something that was on my mind on a regular basis. If I was at work, I needed to get to that drink. Before I came home, I needed to make sure that I had a drink. When I first woke up in the morning, especially when I moved into that area of compulsive drinking the last 5 or so years of my drinking and using, it was always on my mind. It was a mental obsession. I was obsessed with the thought of drink. And once I had taken that drink, the allergy, the physical allergy, told me that I needed more than one. They were hand in hand. They were twins. Physical allergy that was brought on by that mental obsession. And what's fabulous about recovery, and I'll skip to the end before I go back and cover more step one, the physical allergy never goes away. It's always with me. My physical allergy is stamped in my DNA. And that's why I can never safely drink or use to any degree, any amount, ever again. So in step one, we begin to build the foundation of admitting that I have this mental obsession, that I am powerless over alcohol because of the physical allergy, that my life had become unmanageable with relation to my alcohol usage and my compulsion to drink. And until I could fully understand that, the rest of the steps weren't necessary. In matter of fact, why would I want to take the rest of the steps and begin to surrender and admit and agree to some of the other things that were necessary for me to admit and agree to with respect to steps 2 through 12 if I didn't have this powerlessness, if my life had not become unmanageable? If my life was still manageable, then why did I need to do the rest of the work? If I wasn't completely powerless over alcohol, then why couldn't I just take one drink? And the great obsession of every abnormal drinker is to prove that they could drink like a normal person, therefore non-alcoholic. You know, it tells me that that has to be smashed, that that has to be put away, that that has to be dispelled. And the sooner we dispel that myth, the better off we're going to be. One of my dear, dear friends early on in recovery, his name was Pete the Greek. And Pete was an exceptional person. When I first met him back in 1986, Pete had been sober 15, 16 years. He was a good friend of my sponsor, Jack, who, when I first met Jack back in 1986, was sober and clean a little bit over 12 years. And Pete used to tell me, when we talked about the steps, he said, Robert, step one is the step that you must do to perfection. He said, all the other steps you can afford to make a mistake in. But if you ever make a mistake in step one, the likelihood is you're not going to feel that you're powerless over alcohol. You're not going to feel that your life had become unmanageable to the degree that it has become unmanageable. Therefore, do not make a mistake when it comes to step one. Stay on step one as long as you think you need to, with the help of your sponsor, to fully understand the degree of powerlessness that you have and how unmanageable your life had become. You know, it says that our steps are meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. But you know what? In the 12 and 12, as it talks about step one, it tells me that my alternative is to go out to try to do some controlled drinking. Go back out, try it again. You know, in other words, as it says, get a belly full of your condition. And when you become sweetly reasonable, which is kind of an unusual term, but that's what we need to become. We need to become open-minded, as it talks about in step one. I need to be open-minded to the degree that I am powerless. Maybe I can't defeat this. Maybe my mental obsession is so strong that I have to admit that I am powerless, that my life has become unmanageable, especially in relation to my drinking. Look at your life as I looked at my life. What further evidence do you need for you to believe that you are powerless over alcohol and drugs, that your life has become unmanageable? I don't know what more evidence you would need. Take a look at your life. Sit down with someone in Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. Begin to discuss how you drank, how you used, what you were willing to give up for that drink, for that drug, and then look at your life. You know, it talks about we have to hit bottom. A bottom is a relative term. My bottom was the bottom that I needed to begin moving forward in my recovery, to fully accept and understand step one. Your bottom may be different. Maybe you've lost more than me. Maybe you haven't lost enough. But what is it going to take? What is it going to take for you to say, I've had enough? What is it going to take for you? Do you have to get divorced? Do you have to lose your children? Do you have to lose your job? Do you have to lose your life? What is it going to take? Sooner rather than later, we need to come to terms with step one. We need to admit that we're powerless over alcohol, that our life had become unmanageable. We need to understand that we're not bad people trying to get better, but we're sick people trying to get well. We suffer from a mental obsession coupled with a physical allergy. And even though we can't ever do anything about the physical allergy, we can do something about the mental obsession. And the first thing that I can do and that we can do for the mental obsession is to admit we have one, to admit defeat, to admit I am powerless. My life has become unmanageable, and maybe I need some help. My name is Robert, and I'm the Recovery Guy. Won't you join us? Won't you help us take you from broken to whole? Visit our website, find us, look at our materials, see if there's something that we can do to make your life better. And I guarantee you that if you do what's suggested, you have a possibility of a life that will take you beyond your wildest dreams. It's done so for me, and I pray it will do so for you. Thank you for joining us today.